I was a little hard on the North Dakota Monitor in that segment. I think their reporting is fine, and I think they employ some good people. Their model, I think it's a mistake for the newspaper industry to embrace that, because it fundamentally undermines our business model. I mean, they're giving the product away for free, and it's paid for by I don't know who. And I am not as I guess as easygoing about that as Cecile is. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I have a problem with them undermining local news produced by local businesses.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like we're at a tipping point where folks do need to look at different models. But I think her overall point of people appreciating the value and the work and the cost of the work that's being done is really, really important. And people, I mean, Rob, you and I every day hear from people who are pissed off about paywalls every day.
Oh yeah, I probably hear about it significantly more.
I would imagine so.
Yeah. People complaining at me like, "Why did you put this behind a paywall?" Well, I'd like to be able to send my kids to college one day and pay my mortgage. I'm sorry. I mean, it costs money. It takes labor to make the news, and not just the reporters, but there's a whole. I mean, at the forum, there are so many unsung heroes. Thomas Evanella, Katie Young, Matt Von Panon. I mean, or Matt's the editor. So, but I mean, you probably don't know their names, but they do so much work, making sure that what we put out is done correctly. I mean, my work would be significantly diminished in its value were it not for them. And they need to be paid too. They have families, they're people. It takes a lot of work. If you want this stuff to happen, you have to pay for it. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, you have to pay for it.
It's part of why I don't like the nonprofit, because I think it perpetuates the idea that you don't have to pay for this stuff.
Yeah.
You do have to pay for it.
Yeah. And that's but if the public's not willing to pay, and it's still something that needs to be done for our communities, because I agree with everything that you were saying about city commissions, county commissions, school boards, state government, plus the bake sale. If the subscription model and the advertising model isn't working, do we need to look at different things, even if it's not ideal?
And I should say that in some ways it is working. We've seen at the national level a lot of success. Big companies like the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, they're finding success with it. Now, obviously, that's a very different business than we have. But even locally, I mean, I could tell. I don't want to give the impression that the forum is dying. Our subscriber base, our digital. Now it's a transition because we're seeing people moving from print to digital, which kind of drove some of my suspicion though of people still wanting a print product. I do think that's a diminishing market, but maybe I'm wrong.
I gotta be honest. You don't see people like if you're walking through an airport. Back in the day, everybody would have the paper, or even on an airplane,
old papers laying all over the chairs.
Yeah, you don't see that anymore, which would also lead me to believe maybe people are more interested in digital.
I think so, but on the other side, we're doing okay. And that's why I think the newspaper, we got to start talking about it like it's dying. Old business models are dying.
Right. It's all about the business model.
New business models can take its place and are taking its place, and they are finding success. And the news isn't going anywhere. But the real struggle is locally, or I should say rural. Those are tough markets right now. But people got to get out there and you got to support. If you want somebody in that room at the county commission or the township or whatever, you got to pay for it.
And how about the fact she said the Crosby Journal there's 2,400 people that live in Crosby and there's 2,000 subscribers or something like that. There's a community that appreciates the newspaper.
Yeah. Although, that's probably there's probably a lot of people just Divide County in general. For sure.
Well, Divide County and expats, right? I mean, I know a lot of people who subscribe.
I get emails from people who are like, "Oh, I lived in Fargo 20 years ago. I live in California now, but I read your column every day because I like to know what's going on." And I hear from people like that all the time. Yeah. That's cool. That's great.
Makes sense.
That's wonderful. All right. We should probably talk about Charlie Kirk. And this is a hard topic to talk about. And I want to stipulate, I know you do as well at the beginning, that his murder was an absolute gobsmacking, disgusting tragedy. This was a young man with a family. This was a young man who was exercising his First Amendment rights. And whatever we may think of his impact on national politics, and I don't necessarily know that it was an overall positive one, he didn't deserve to be murdered. Nobody deserves to be murdered. It's we were talking a little bit at the break about how, that video of him being murdered was almost unavoidable. It kept popping up in feeds. And I don't know how I feel about people seeing it. And sometimes I feel like people need to look at the evil in the eye to really understand its scope. On the other side, I think we're going through a moment of national PTSD from seeing it's a terrible, terrible, disgusting thing. A lot of the response to it has been terrible and disgusting as well. And that's kind of the thing that I'm dealing with right now. I think we're having a hard time separating almost everybody, except for some creeps and extremists on the fringes, think that Charlie Kirk being gunned down on a college campus in Utah was a terrible, disgusting, inexcusable thing.
Yep.
You could still also believe that the Trump administration's response to it has not been great, and that Charlie Kirk himself maybe wasn't a figure that we supported.
So I was actually coming back on Wednesday from Larry Robinson's funeral. By the way, I appreciate you and Zach talking about Larry last week on the podcast because he was a great public servant. But that's when I heard about, Charlie Kirk being shot, and then obviously started to get some messages that indicated that he was likely going to pass away based on the footage that at that point I hadn't seen. And it made me sick. Still makes me sick thinking about this guy and his kids and getting murdered.
Family, his friends.
Yeah, assassinated in the same way that the legislator in Minnesota got assassinated in her home, and another one was attempted to. The same way I felt when Steve Scalise was shot playing softball. The same way I felt when Gabby Gifford was shot.
Somebody took a shot at Donald Trump.
Yeah,
absolutely sick to my stomach. And somebody else attempted to later. Was it weeks later at the golf course? Luckily, They never even got a shot off. But
and it's the same way, though, Rob, that I feel every time I hear about a school shooting or something. I mean, it's sick, and the people who are bringing this violence, political or otherwise, are sick people. And there's no monopoly on the left or the right for having sick people. And we have to figure out how to do better as a country. I don't know what the answer is. Damn, if you and I could figure out the answer, we would have done it a long time ago. But what we can all agree is this is not the way to do it. And we should all be disgusted and sick and queasy about this, about Charlie Kirk being assassinated.
Absolutely.
But I also told you before we did this is the most nervous I've been to do one of these plane talks in a long, long time. Because if people say the wrong words, there is something going on where there's people being targeted. And it makes me nervous to talk about this for 30 minutes and know that we have to be careful about the way we talk about this. I don't like that either. We should be able to talk about how we feel about things. And I agree, there's monsters on both sides who celebrate these things. That's not normal people. Those people are monsters.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're out there saying you're glad that he was shot, and that's what I wrote in the column yesterday, kind of trying to balance. I don't have cancel culture is a funny thing because I don't think it's cancel culture if the public reacts to you in a way when you say something that is just completely out of the norm. So if you're endorsing the murder of political figures you don't like, and you lose your job because of that, I don't think that's cancel culture. I think that's cause and effect. You espoused a point of view that is extreme, that our society it does not endorse, right? You endorse that, and then your employer or what have you doesn't want to be associated with you anymore. That's cause and effect. I don't have any sympathy for people who lose their jobs because of that. I do have sympathy for people who are being targeted when you have the president of the United States using his megaphone that his position gives him to use this event to further divide us. And this insinuation that there's networks that, painting with this broad brush that the left, and they say, oh, well, it's the extreme left. Will you tell me a Democrat that Donald Trump and his cohort don't think is extreme. They're painting with this broad brush and saying it's all of them. It's them. They did that to us. That I think is dangerous and wrong and disgusting, and not as disgusting as murdering somebody, but it leaves me feeling disgusted. And this thing too, where immediately, Charlie Kirk is being treated like he was a saint. He was not a saint. He said a lot of incendiary, inflammatory things that I found deeply objectionable. Again, shouldn't have earned him a bullet. And it's terrible that he died. And I'm not blaming speech for it. He has the same First Amendment rights that everybody. I agree with Charlie Kirk when it comes to the First Amendment. I'm an absolutist. There is no such thing as hate speech in terms of speech that we're going to make. I think there's hateful speech, don't get me wrong, and speech that I don't like and don't agree with. But as a legal definition, there's no such thing as hate speech that we can make illegal under the First Amendment. I agree with him on that. But I can't ignore the things that he said or the things that he was punching down. And I chafe a little bit at this idea that we're going to turn him into a saint that he was not.
So I think to your first point about the ramifications of people saying terrible stuff on social media about this or other things. And I, with you, I'm a First Amendment guy. People have the right to say it. They also have to live with the cause or what happens when they say it.
If you're a car dealership and one of your salesmen is on social media making people mad, saying terrible things, I think you have a right to say, listen, I don't want my business associated with this person.
Now, what gets more complicated is when the employer is the government, right? I think that's where it gets more complicated. What is that line to fire a staff person? You need to make sure that you're not creating sort of a mob-like effect that if somebody, says something, because right now it is what you just said about Charlie Kirk not being a saint or disagreeing with some things, that's a bit controversial to say right now, that people are looking at anything associated with Charlie Kirk in very black and white terms. Now that he's passed away, assassinated, murdered, we have to ignore everything that he said. I mean, I'm left of center, right? I disagreed with a lot of the things that Charlie Kirk said. That doesn't make me a bad person because I haven't fallen in line that the guys again, we should all agree that political violence, and I actually appreciate some of the ways that Charlie Kirk engaged the opposition to have actual conversations. I think that's good for our country. But we have to be able to still be able to talk about things in a way that isn't just so black. And there's nuance in all these things. One thing that there is a nuance on is political violence is terrible. And this was a tragic, tragic thing done by one person, not some left-wing sort of conspiracy, by one really, really deranged person.
I really liked some of the comments that Utah Governor Spencer Cox, who's a Republican, as you would imagine, because he's in
Utah.
And the thing about it, and I'm trying to find it right now, but it's essentially, he was saying, get outside, touch some grass. And it really bothered me that, he got some blowback from that, because I think he was right. Like he's calling people, calm down, cool down. What really bothered me is I think the world of influencers, left and right, looked at Charlie Kirk getting murdered and thought that's content. Right? They didn't see a tragedy. They thought, what can I say or what can I do about this that's going to cut through and it's going to get me trending. It's going to get me going viral. And so what that drives is a lot of very sensational things. I think a lot of people who said awful things about him dying, condoning it or whatever, I think it was a performance. I think they were saying something. Attention. And I think on the other side, just going over the top with Kirk, I think that is performative as well. He was a human being and he had flaws and he didn't deserve to be murdered. And he had flaws just like you and I have flaws. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
saying he was different in that regard at all. He was one of us. He was an American, and he was gunned down while engaging in his First Amendment rights. And that's a terrible, terrible thing for all of us. But the way we've reacted to it, I think, has been a national disgrace, left and right.
So you brought up Spencer Cox, and I want to call out one other thing, communication that I thought was really, really good, because I agree with you on Spencer Cox, that I think that the governor of Utah has done a really good job of trying to calm things down, which I don't know if anybody can really calm things down because we have people who are also lighting it up. But the First Lady Armstrong joined a bunch of fellow first spouses and putting out a statement the next day. Same sort of thing. We need to calm things down. We can disagree without coming to this point. And I was proud of her. The First Lady of South Dakota signed on to it. Tim Walz's wife, Gavin Newsom's wife. Right, it's a really, really broad bipartisan group, but it's a great statement. And that's what we need from leadership right now. We need leaders who are calming things down, not accelerating the division or accelerating. Like I've talked to you about this. I didn't like when J.D. Vance went on national TV and said if somebody says something about this assassination that, you should report it to their employers or you should do this. I don't think the vice president should be sort of calling out
Organized
political
online mob.
Yeah, it seems like that's below him.
Well, below him, I think it's also it's just a disgraceful thing to do, no matter who you are. And then when you're using the megaphone that comes with the vice presidency to do that, it's wrong. Hey, by the way, Governor Cox, Steve Bannon, is now calling for him to be investigated because of his comments. Some of the things he said is that, this is what he told Kristen Welker on Meet the Press, NBC News. He said, I believe that this is Governor Cox now. He said, I believe that social media has played a direct role in every single assassination and assassination attempt we have seen over the last 5 or 6 years. There's no question in my mind. Cancer probably isn't a strong enough word. What we have done, especially to our kids, it took us decades to realize how evil these algorithms are. I agree with that.
So do I.
I agree with that. But the problem is that who he's pushing back on when he talks about those algorithms is people like Steve Bannon, who rely on those algorithms, who have got famous, who make a living now. Steve Bannon and a whole galaxy of other influencers left and right who exploit those algorithms to get their audiences and make their living. That's their power, is that they're pushing inflammatory things. And so Spencer Cox firing a cruise missile saying, check out from that stuff. Talk to one another. Get off social media. It is terrible for people like Steve Bannon's business model. And so, of course, they're going to now the governor should be investigated because he told people to calm down. Come on.
And Spencer Cox wasn't calling out the right or the left in that statement. He was saying, as Americans, for God's sakes, I wish we could just identify as Americans sometimes. When he was assassinated again, when Representative Horton was assassinated in Minnesota, those are times where we need to be Americans. There are times where we should all just be able to say this is terrible. And I will say, when Representative Horton was assassinated, there were a lot of Republicans who said, "Oh my God, this is a terrible thing." Lots of Republicans.
Just like I would say, like if you want to
just like most
file Republicans,
most Democrats now are saying this is a terrible thing. Let's focus on those folks and how we can work together to help create a place where this kind of stuff does not happen. Because we talked about trauma and PTSD. I talked to some of my friends on the left the other day who were like, obviously I didn't agree with everything Charlie Kirk said, but I'm affected by this. This guy was around my age. This guy had kids. This is the country that I'm raising my kids in. And so again, this is all of us who are affected by this in a really negative way. So now's the time where we need to come together, not divide us even more. And I just wish, again, Spencer Cox, the first spouses. I mean, there's some really great examples around. We just currently aren't getting that from everybody.
No, because again, I think what gets you juice on the internet is saying something inflammatory, and then also like finding the examples of someone who's very extreme on the left or very extreme on the right. finding that example and saying this is the left, this is the right, as if they represent everybody there. I'm on the right. Steve Bannon doesn't represent my point of view.
Right. And
but again, let me ask you that question specifically. When he says that every single assassination attempt is connected to social media, that's a bold statement. And I'm inclined to say, when you say every single, when you speak in absolutes like that, I think that, but I think if you wanted to say that most of them are influenced in some way by people being radicalized on social media, I think he's got a point.
Right. I think he's got a great point. And again, it's not the right or the left, it's both. When you're just being fed the information you want to hear and you see the other side as evil, or, that's going to radicalize you in some ways, and it's not healthy, especially if there's people who are predisposed to mental illness or other things like that. But I'm trying to think back in any of these cases, if there weren't like examples of them being radicalized online, and I think the Governor Cox, I agree, shouldn't speak in absolutes all the time, but the vast majority, I can't think of one that's not, where the social media was not involved.
I think he's got a point. I mean, we don't have to prove the absolute,
right,
to have a good point. And I mean, I'm to the point where I as much as I have argued, about the cell phone ban and everything, I think that's downstream from the greater problem, which is what people are accessing with those cell phones. I think that's the thing that we need to be attacking. And we need, and I don't know how we do it, but the Googles of the world, the Facebooks of the world, the Twitters of the world, all of TikTok, we need to come down with them on a heavy hammer. Now on the other hand, I don't want to crush dissent. I don't want the politicians to make it easier for them to accumulate and keep power because they've made it harder for people to communicate and discuss and engage in legitimate First Amendment topics. But these business models are built around making money from pitting Americans against one another. And that's got to stop.
Thinking about Governor Cox and his comment about go outside, and I did do sort of I tried to avoid social media and cable news for the last week because I knew it wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for my mental health, whatever. And the last 2 nights I've been at Evan's flag football game. And last night watching him play flag football, I was thinking, not one of these kids knows if the other kid supports Donald Trump or not. None of the parents were talking about it, whatever. I don't know how that's not a cleansing thing. How is that not to go out in your community and be around each other? Rob, you don't know Coop's friends. Are they talking about politics? Are they maybe a little bit, but
Coop asked me who Charlie Kirk was, because I think even as a 10-year-old, it bled through into his.
Evan asked us if one of Donald Trump's friends got killed.
But you're right. When I get together, sometimes people ask me about, because they know what I do for a living and they want to talk politics with me, and that's fun. And usually those conversations out in the real world are always respectful. People disagree, but they're fine. They're respectful and they're great. And I enjoy having them with people. And I don't want people to be afraid of talking about politics, because we're Americans and it's part of being a citizen. But I do feel like, you get online though, and it's a different world.
World.
And I think that's the problem, is online it's not real. Like, it's not real. So much of what you're seeing, the memes you're seeing, a lot of time they're exaggerated. They're not true. What we're all doing is, when we get online, because we all want likes and we all want our content to get attention, even if you don't do this for a living, you don't put up a post about politics and not want to get a bunch of comments and likes. And what's the way to get a lot of comments? You say something sensational. You say something outrageous. And that's what gets you there. And again, I'm not even arguing against, because I am controversial at times. I know that. But I think the difference between me and a lot of people is I will take a controversial position when I think it's the right position. And I'll admit when I'm wrong, and I'm not making up facts, and I'm not going to lie to you about things. But I don't mind. So it's not even being controversial. It's not even, having a debate or having an argument. All of those things are fine. But it's this idea that we have to hate one another, or that the other side, the left, the right, that is disgraceful.
Yeah, and who is, like, when the president's saying the left did this, or I didn't do this.
Yeah,
I'm on the left, and I didn't do this.
When I posted on Facebook, because I like everybody else, I was just kind of in shock as the news was coming through, and I just put up a Facebook post, saying something along the lines of it's disgusting, and if you're the sort of person, I wrote, I'm absolutely sickened by the violence in Utah today. If you believe what someone says justifies harming them, you're part of the problem. One of the first comments to pop up was from a guy who said, "You did this, Rob. You did this. You're to blame for this." He said, this is the actual comment. "You're to blame, Rob. You and your leftist buddies. Time for you to retire and be done with your career of hate." That was one of the first responses. And the thing about it is that's exactly the sort of thing that'll get you a lot of attention on social media.
Right.
It's posting that sort of a thing.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if you noticed, you got called a clown a lot yesterday on one of your columns about this. That must be a new thing that, I don't know if it's the algorithm or what, but I don't know. Again, we're not in a position where we can talk about anything associated with this. And I hope we can get there, because it's disgusting, it's terrible, and we have to do better as a country.
Look at the crap each of us get for even doing the show with one another. There's people that don't want you talking to me. There's people on the right that don't want me talking to you. But we're going to do it anyway, because it's good for us. Hey, we got to get rolling, though. Thank you so much for listening, as always. Remember, you can always follow us on the social media things. We're always Plain Talk ND is our handle: TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, X. Call or leave us a voicemail. Leave us a voicemail, or send us a text, 701-587-3141. Certainly appreciate it. Thanks for listening. We'll talk again. That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening.
When you're punching around Rob Port, it's hard not to hit Tomigo. Wow.
Okay. Well, just slamming me left and right.
Welcome back.